Rwanda, April 6, 1994. Seconds before 8:20 p.m., the setting sun paints the tarmac gold. A Dassault Falcon presidential jet circles once. Below, the city of Kigali, ignorant of its impending heartbreak, sparkles in the twilight. A Belgian C-130, carrying UN peacekeepers, had been cleared to land, but was delayed. Presidential priority, came the order. Then, in the sky, boom. A surface-to-air missile rips into the Falcon's wing. Seconds later, another obliterates its tail. Flames engulf the fuselage. It plummets straight into the manicured garden of the presidential palace. On board, 3 French crew members and 9 Rwandan passengers, including 2 presidents. Juvenal Habyarimana of Rwanda and Cyprien Ntaryamira of Burundi, both Hutu leaders. Both were killed instantly. Moments later, chaos, roadblocks, ethnic targeting begins. What had been simmering beneath the surface, decades of tension, colonial manipulation and fear, erupted in fury and death. The genocide consumes nearly 1 million lives in just 100 days. A nation burns. But this isn't where Rwanda's story ends. It starts there. By July 1994, Rwanda lay in tatters. GDP fell by over 50%. Institutions had collapsed, infrastructure was destroyed, trust between neighbors lay in ashes. 2 million Rwandans, many complicit in the violence, fled to refugee camps in eastern Congo and Uganda. Maternal mortality skyrocketed, life expectancy hovered around 47 years. The scene was apocalyptic, mass graves, abandoned clinics, a generation orphaned. Yet, seeds of renewal were already taking root in exile, especially in Kampala, Uganda. Enter Paul Kagame. Born in 1957, Kagame was 2 when his family fled ethnic violence. Refugee life taught him resilience born of exile. In Uganda, he joined Yoweri Museveni's guerrilla forces, later becoming chief of intelligence, earning respect for discipline, focus, and incorruptibility. When the Rwandan Patriotic Front seized Kigali in July 1994, Kagame returned, not as a conqueror, but as an architect of rebirth. Opponents were pardoned, community courts, gacaca, were launched to expose truth and foster reconciliation. No retribution, only reconciliation, Kagame declared, an idea so radical it deepened wounds, yet pointed toward a future. In 2000, Kagame introduced Vision 2020, a bold national plan to remake Rwanda into a middle-income, knowledge-based state. 6 pillars defined the strategy: good governance and institutional capacity, market-oriented agriculture, private sector growth, human resource development, education, health, ICT, infrastructure, transport, energy, ICT, regional integration, crossed by gender equality and environmental sustainability. This roadmap placed people, not resources, at Rwanda's heart, healing the social fabric. Rwanda's population is unique. Over 70% were born post-genocide, untethered to tribal animosities. Programs like Ingando, reconciliation camps, and Itorero, civic training, aimed to forge a shared national identity. Gacaca courts, held in villages, tried 1.2 million cases, ensuring justice was local, accessible, and community-founded. The result? Trust slowly returned. Neighbors became neighbors again. Human development, health and education, healthcare. Life expectancy rose from 47 to 69 years between 2000 and 2022. Maternal mortality declined from 1,071 to 203 per 100,000 births by 2020, a stunning 81% drop. A universal community health insurance scheme covers 90% of citizens. Education. Gross primary enrollment surged to 133%. Primary education became 12 years mandatory, with 30% of the national budget allocated to education. The focus shifted toward technical and ICT skills, fueling Rwanda's Silicon Savannah. These investments gave birth to a generation capable of sustaining a modern economy. Law, order, and clean streets. Rwanda's police force was rebuilt around accountability, community engagement, and human rights training. By 2018, Rwanda ranked 2nd in Africa for law and order in a Gallup poll. Kigali's cleanliness became legendary. Streets swept daily, public toilets maintained, and nighttime safety assured. Kagame often reminded ministers, walk that way, unguarded, just like any Rwandan. The message was clear, no one above the law. With no oil or minerals, Rwanda invested in human and physical infrastructure. Road networks now connect rural areas to Kigali and regional markets. A $2 billion international airport is under construction in Bugesera, targeting 2028 completion. Rusumo Falls hydropower plant, a regional effort with Tanzania and Burundi, adds 80 megawatts to the grid. A $95 million, 2,300-kilometer telecom fiber optic network improved internet ranks. Rwanda stands third in Africa for connectivity. These developments helped create Kigali Innovation City, a mixed-use ICT cluster hosting universities, startups, and labs. Business climate and investment. Boom. Rwanda streamlined bureaucracy, dropped unnecessary licenses, slashed tariffs, strengthened contract enforcement. The result? Moved from 142nd in 2008 to 35th in 2020 on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business, ranked second in Africa, ahead of Japan and Switzerland. FDI commitments reached $3.2 billion in 2024 from $2.4 billion in 2023. Growth, 8.9% GDP in 2024. Projected 7.1% average through 2027. Industries benefiting: tourism, manufacturing, agribusiness, financial services, light processing, and ICT. Tension builds. Something isn't adding up. Mineral wides blowing from the east. Rwanda exports more minerals than it mines, a paradox. In 2024, mineral export earnings hit $1.7 billion, with $1.5 billion from gold alone. In 2022, the IMF reported $654 million in gold exports, plus 150 metric tons of coltan in 2024, far exceeding domestic production. In 2021, Rwanda accounted for 15% of the world's tantalum output, yet lacks major domestic reserves. Trade data confirms the truth. In quarter 2024, 94.6% of Rwandan re-exports went to the DRC. Quarter 2024, exports surged by 70% to $677 million, with the DRC among the top partners. Smuggling, conflict, and shadow economies. Reports from Reuters and UN experts electrify scrutiny. The M23 rebel group with ties to Rwanda seized Rubaya mines, harvesting $800,000 per month in coltan taxes. The DRC finance minister estimates $1 billion in minerals are illicitly smuggled annually into Rwanda. UAE imported nearly $885 million in gold from Rwanda in 2023, a 75% rise. Rwanda is not a gold producer. UN scrutiny of traceability systems of ITSCI flagged systemic failure and smuggling via Rwanda. Economic juxtaposition. These flows fuel Rwanda's infrastructure, tech parks, FDI, and public spending, but at what cost? Much of the revenue appears to finance connectivity, roads, fiber, airports, in part funded by Bugesera, and hydropower projects made possible through increased domestic revenue. The IMF and World Bank acknowledge Rwanda's strong performance, but warn of current account deficits and external vulnerabilities. Critics, however, point to a development paradox. Rwanda thrives, while Eastern Congo suffers, with violence, displacement, and environmental harm. Some voices defend Rwanda. Analysts caution against labeling its prosperity as looting, noting that major DRC exports, copper, cobalt, go to global markets, not Rwanda. Yet, smuggling of gold and coltan, the 3T minerals, is harder to dismiss.
Do you consider running or?
Well, I consider running for another 20 years.
Kagame's model is often described as a consensus democracy. Opposition is limited. Kagame has secured 4 7-year terms. Political dissent is tightly regulated, justified as essential to maintain unity and prevent a return to genocide. Critics describe this as developmental authoritarianism. Power is centralized, debate restricted, but results are undeniable. Poverty dropped from 78% in 2001 to 55% in 2017. Human development soared. Infrastructure advanced. Rwanda's ambition, becoming Africa's Singapore, takes shape. Kagame argues that Rwanda is not sacrificing democracy for growth, but forging a model of stability suited to its fragile past. The majority appear to agree, despite international concern. The script now arrives at tension's zenith. Rwanda is cleaner, safer, and wealthier. Its people breathe easier. Its skyline grows. Its tech parks spark with innovation. But beyond the official narrative lies another. The Congo connection ties Rwanda's prosperity to external conflict. Eastern Congo bleeds its minerals, not for local uplift, but to fuel foreign rebuild. International markets benefit while border communities suffer. Can Rwanda balance its moral imperative to uplift with the shadow of profit born in turmoil? Rwanda's ascent is undeniable, driven by strategy, sacrifice, and disciplined leadership. It has rewritten its story, from genocide to growth, from orphaned economy to a tech hub, from distrusting neighbors to a society where ministers walk unguarded. Yet embedded in its success is complexity. The Congo trade that fuels its infrastructure is built on contested terrain. Its development model demands unity, sometimes at the cost of democratic pluralism. It has become an icon of transformation, but borne by others' suffering. Rwanda today is both a miracle and a warning, a testament to human capacity and a cautionary tale on the ethics of progress.